Hi there, Colts. Welcome back. We're going to be doing readiness assessment number 4. For this one, we're going to do questions 1 through 8. So starting with number 1, it says, which statement about the line below are true? And it's possible, because it has an S, that there is more than one. So we're going to go through each one. The x-intercept is -8 is our option for A. So remember, x-intercept means where it crosses the x-axis. So we go to our line and we see, yes, it does cross at -8. We look at option B. The line has a positive slope. Because if we are going from left to right, it is increasing, it's going up, it is going to be a positive slope. Our y-intercept is 4, so we're going to look where it crosses the y-axis, and we see that it does cross at +4, and the line has a negative slope. We already established that it was a positive slope, so it is not going to be a negative slope. So we're going to get those first 3 options. Okay, looking at number 2, which statement describes the graph of the equation x equals -2? Now, if you remember, when we graph these lines that look like x equals -2, I'm going to go here to -2, it's saying I want, or x is -2, so if we remember on the x-axis at -2 is here, but x equals -2, let's use a different color, is going to be a vertical line where every single value on that line has an x value of -2. Okay, so if we recall, now we're going to go through again, select all that apply. The graph of this line is a horizontal line. So we've gone through a couple of them, but this is not a horizontal line. Okay, the slope of this line is undefined, so think about running. We can't run up and down like that. So that is our example we have of undefined. The graph passes through the ordered pair of -2, 3. So if I were to look here and I were to make these -2, 3, that value would be on there because my line is at x equals -2. Okay, and then my last option, the x-intercept of the line is -2, 0, which is in fact where it crosses the x-axis. So it would also be D. Okay, moving on to number 3. Which equation represents the graph? So we're going to look through here, and because all of our options are in y equals mx plus b format, our slope-intercept form, we just need our slope and we need our y-intercept. So our slope in this case, looking at our line, we know it's going to be negative. So right away we can get rid of C and A because those are not negative, because these are positive slopes, so it's not going to be those ones. So I'm going to pick a nice point where the line crosses here, here, or maybe here, or here, and I want to see how much it changes. So if I go from this first blue point here, let's use a highlighter. If I go from here to here, I want to see how much they change. So I'm going to drop down 2. So I'm going down 2 spaces, and I'm going to run 1 space. So I'm going to end up with -2 over 1. And then remember, our B is our y-intercept. And so I say, okay, where does it cross my y-axis? And it's going to be at -1. So we can simplify this slope to just -2. So I look down at my multiple choice options, and I end up with D for my option in this case. Okay, we're going to jump up to number 4. Hopefully it's not too zoomed in for you. So number 4, it says, which statement describes the graph of y equals -x plus 3 and y equals -x plus 6? I'm going to zoom out a little bit so that I can use a sticky note to help us graph it. So if you like to graph it, you can graph it, and some of you might be able to see it without the graph. So I know I need a y-intercept of 3, so I want to make sure at least I have 3 spaces here, and I know I need a y-intercept of 6, so I want to make sure that I have 6 spaces. So looking at my first equation here, my slope is going to be associated with that negative out front of that x, and if we remember, we don't want our variables, so it's just going to be -1 over 1, and we're going to start at 3. So I'm going to start here at 3, and I'm going to go down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1. And remember, we could do it opposite as well. We can go up 1, left 1. It's going to give us that same thing. So there's our first equation. And then our second equation, we're going to start at 6, and we are going to have the exact same slope because they both have a negative x. And so if you remember, without even graphing it, you might have seen it, that they both have the same slope, and if they have the same slope, we know that those lines are not going to intersect. So it can't be A, and it can't be D. And so we look at these and we say, oh, if I recall, lines that have the same slope are parallel. Lines that are perpendicular, their slopes are opposite reciprocals. And in this case, they're exactly the same. Okay, so we're going to move on to number 5. Okay, number 5, which equation represents the values in the table? So we need to look at our x values first and see if they go up by 1. This one goes up by 1, this one goes up by 1, this one goes up by 1. Okay, so we could see that the slope is consistent. From negative 1 to 3, we see that it's increasing. Now, if the negatives are hard, you can maybe jump over to the positive and say 3 plus what gives us 7. And we see plus 4, we see plus 4. So if I do negative 1 plus 4, that also gives me 3. So we see that it goes up by 4 every time. And so we look, we got a 4 here. This one doesn't have a 4 at all. This one doesn't have a 4 for C. And then D has a 1/4. They kind of just throw out some fractions. But remember, our initial value, or our value of B, is going to be where x equals 0. So because my value is 3, I'm going to look down here and I'm going to select A as my option. So it matches my slope and it matches my y-intercept. So not bad when they go up by 1 for my x values. So now I'm going to jump down here to number 6. Number 6, if I look here, I'm going to go from negative 4 to 0. It increases by 4. It increases by 4. And then it increases by 2. So it's a little bit different this time. So because my first ones increase by 4, I'm going to see how they change. Because it's trying to tell me, what is that value where that question mark is? What is this value here going to be? Well, because these go up the same amount, I can use this first part here to help me with this second part here. So from 3 to 4, it goes up by 1. And so from 4 to here, it should also go up by 1 because they both increase by 4. And then if I notice, because this increases by 2, it's like I took this 1 and I say, well, it only should go up by a half because, or 0.5 in that case, because I'm only going up by 2 in this case. So my question mark in this case is going to equal 5. Okay, number 7. What is the equation in slope-intercept form of a line that has a slope of negative 1/2 and a y-intercept of 6? So another one, it's practicing our y equals mx plus b. And so we're going to do a slope of a negative half x plus 6, where we're just going to plug in our value of b. And then number 8, what is the slope of the graph of the equation? 4x minus 6y equals 2. So we want to get the y by itself in order for us to find that slope. So I'm going to rewrite it over here. 4x minus 6y equals 2. I'm going to subtract 4x, and I'm going to say negative 6y, so don't lose that negative, equals negative 4x plus 2. And I'm going to put the 4x out front because remember, we're y equals mx plus b is our format. So I'm going to divide this by negative 6. I'm going to divide this by negative 6. I'm going to end up with y equals, now don't forget our butterfly method. So this part is going to be divided by negative 6, and this part is going to be divided by negative 6. So I have negative 4 over negative 6, and there's an x, plus 2 over a negative 6. So I have a negative over a negative, and I'm going to say y equals, I'm going to reduce that to 2/3, and because I have a negative over a negative, it's going to be positive x, and then 2 over negative 6, I have 1 negative, and they're both even, so I'm going to reduce it to 1/3. And in this case, we didn't even have to do the 1/3 part, but just to finish it, but it wants to know the slope. And remember, our slope is next to our value of x, and so we're going to say that our slope in this case is going to be 2/3. And that concludes Readiness Assessment number 4, questions 1 through 8.